Hawaii's affordable housing crisis is real. There aren't enough homes that people can afford to buy or rent, leaving families with limited, not so desirable options, including moving away from the islands. Why does it have to be this way? Why can't this story change for the better, and soon? Tonight's live broadcast and live stream of What's It Going to Take on Insights on PBS Hawaii start now.
Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Larry Yamada. Well, buying or renting a home in Hawaii is difficult to begin with, right? Well, finding a place that is affordable is near impossible these days. It seems like this is an age-old discussion with intermittent promises to fix the problem. And in the past 5 years, the state has built 8,750 new homes. That's according to the Hawaii Housing Finance and Development Corporation. Yet, in a 2015 report, the state found that Hawaii needs approximately 65,000 new units by 2025, 5 years from now, a deadline that's not likely to be met. So we ask again, what is it going to take to solve this problem? Our guests tonight include developers, a nonprofit agency pushing for more affordable housing, and a representative from the Housing Office for the City and County of Honolulu. So as always, we look forward to your participation in tonight's show. You can call, you can email, or tweet your questions, and you'll find a live stream of this program at pbshawaii.org and the PBS Hawaii Facebook page. All right, now to our guests. Keith Webster is the co-chair of the Faith Action Housing Task Force and the Housing Now Coalition. Both are grassroots nonprofit community organizations taking on the challenges of improving the quality of life for the people of Hawaii and solving Hawaii's housing crisis. Kevin Carney is the vice president of EAH Housing, a nonprofit corporation dedicated to developing, managing, and promoting quality affordable housing. Peter Savio is a housing developer and the president and CEO of the Savio Group. He has more than 40 years of experience in real estate development and sales in Hawaii. And Mark Alexander is the executive director of the Office of Housing with the City and County of Honolulu, which deals with homelessness and affordable housing. So thank you, gentlemen, all of you, for being here, being involved in this for so long, because we need so many dedicated people for such a complicated problem. So let's set some groundwork here a little bit. We talk about affordable housing and everybody hears all these different numbers kind of thrown out there. Let's sort of level set right now as to how we define affordable housing today and the income level that qualifies you for affordable housing.
Well, I think first off, if we look at the entire number of houses that are needed, the 26,000 or 65,000 unit plus, we get overwhelmed. So we need to break it down. I think a couple years ago, the state had a task force that focused on rental housing. And for the state, what we need is around 22,500 of rental units. And of those, the vast majority are for 60% and below. So the area of target is that 60% area median income and below, not 140 and below.
Where are we at the median income right now?
Well, the usual
99,000.
Yeah, 99. So 100,000 for a family of four, basically,
okay,
is what we use as a rule of thumb. So you're talking about 60%. You're talking about approximately $60,000 for something that's affordable for someone in that range.
Okay.
Yes.
As far as what they could. So, and how else are you seeing how that's changed right now? Because that fluctuates, doesn't it? It's fluctuated over the years.
It changes as the market, as wages go up, then the median income goes up. So again, the prices would tend to go up. I think I have to kind of disagree with what they're saying. I think even what you're saying, it's not trying to understand what we've been doing, because our market has changed. The problem has changed. We do not understand what has to be done. We talk about using the Singapore example, and they think the Singapore example is leasehold and building a lot of units. No, the Singapore example is real estate exists to create wealth. For our people to survive, they need to own the unit they live in. We talk about rental housing. The worst thing this state can do is build long-term rental housing, because that means whoever rents, we're going to subsidize them for the rest of their lives. The rents will go up. Eventually they can't afford, they become homeless, or they move. We have to have rental housing that creates value for the tenants, that creates equity for the tenants.
So let's level set. We're going to get back to that because this is absolutely. You're going to get back in the end, no doubt. But let's level set for everybody a little bit and kind of get everybody a little bit more up to speed as to where we are today in other areas, and just sort of play with some of those numbers and concepts maybe that people have right now that maybe need to be updated themselves. So let's kind of talk about this report. A lot of people reference the 2015 report that came out from DBED, Department of Business and Economic Development and Tourism. There we go. That was a report that came out saying, right, 65,000 is what we need by 2025. Has that report been updated? How do you see those numbers right now in your perspective? Has it changed? Was it accurate? Is it?
So a big thing on that 65,000 though is that was based on projections of growth. So that was saying if we had the housing we needed at the beginning of the report, based on population growing, here's the additional housing we were going to need. But really what it didn't take into account is all of the need that we had at the beginning. In other words, there's still a lot of people that are just living together. You've got kids living in their parents' homes. You've got multiple families in apartments. And so it was a growth-based report as I've read it. And what we need to do is also take a look at the unmet demand that we had at the beginning. So the number is bigger, but I think it's a great number to start with because we're nowhere near getting to that 65,000. If we could do that, we would make such a big dent in the problem. We would have a lot of people housed that need to be housed. But I think what Peter was getting to is so critical, and that is that, the market has changed, and it's changed in really significant ways because, well, I don't want to take Peter's thunder here, but it's an international world now. And so that we have a lot of people coming in, buying on our property that are not local residents. And that's a huge deal because it's taking away the housing stock from people that live here.
Now, you're saying, I want to ask you about this, by the way. You said on your property, so because you work with a nonprofit organization, are you seeing it? So you're seeing people from the international community coming into your neck of the woods as well, and taking. How do you?
Well, I'm just looking at what we saw going on in Kaka'ako, and I just have what I've heard people say. But some of those condominiums were very, very expensive, and there are local people living in them. We have some wealthy people in Hawaii, but the people that we need to serve the most, the people that are working the jobs, making regular wages in Hawaii. Those are the people that are, in the 30% of AMI to 80% of AMI. That's where a lot of the need is. And that's not the housing that's being built. And it's because it's expensive to build here.
Now, I have to say, though, and this is where I think the numbers can become overwhelming. We need to parse them down. When you look at the 60% AMI area rentals, we're talking about around area median income. You're talking about 5,000 units is what's needed for that. And I think what you have to do is you got to focus on the big rocks. The great need is the 30% AMI and below. And so that's one of the reasons why Mayor Caldwell shifted his attention, the city's attention, towards trying to encourage that, which is why for the first time we're on track for 1,150 units, focus on 60% AMI and below.
I'll let
and
you
these
guys
are real
continue.
units.
Just a quick graphic we want to throw up on housing demand. The 74% of units needed are for households making less than $75,000. Just a reference, but continue.
Right.
Yeah.
That graphic's behind us there, but.
Yeah, and 60% AMI is equivalent for a family of 4, is equivalent to $72,300. That's the maximum income that they can make. If you're at 30%,
you get bumped out.
No, you don't qualify to apply, right? And at 30% for like a one person at 30% AMI, the maximum income is $25,200. Right.
So I think that's why it's important to focus first on that segment that really has a need, and it's very quantifiable.
And the rents are set by HUD, mostly because these are subsidized properties, not necessarily subsidized by HUD, but through low-income housing tax credits, the rental housing revolving fund, et cetera. And the rent is basically set at 30% of their income, right, which is what HUD defines as affordable. Okay, so they're really not going to lose that apartment. They could be qualified one day and win the lottery the next day. There's no provision for us to terminate their lease. they could remain in that unit if they so choose to do so.
Are the numbers still accurate, would you say? Are we still at an estimate of needing 65,000? Are we?
Our land use study that we did, though, just earlier this year says that actually we're going to hit our housing need pretty much in about 10 years, the housing need that we have. The only area where we won't is for the poor, especially at 30% and below and 60% and below. That's the area where we're not going to be able to meet our need.
That report was recently updated.
It was.
Just hasn't been distributed yet to the public.
But I have to question the report. And I don't know enough about the details to be able to say this, but my question on the report is so I know that we've had an issue for over the last 3 years with declining population. And, you know, but that's because people are moving away, especially our young people, because it's very, very difficult to live here. I don't know that a declining population, if you were to extrapolate that, would turn into that we're going to have met our housing needs, because the young people are what we need to keep this whole economy going. It's right for our community, it's right for our families, but also as we age, as many of us age, the young people are the ones that have to do the work. We need a young population that can grow their families, that can come in and start their businesses and keep our economy turning.
I'll let you jump in, Peter.
I think again, everyone talks about building rental housing, building subsidized housing, but they forget we really can't afford to do that because of the sheer amount of funds that are needed. But you also have to realize if somebody's in a rental project, they're not going to be able to retire in Hawaii because rents will go up. Ownership, that's what we have to look at, is why do you buy real estate? Because you can lock in a monthly payment. Wages go up, you get to keep those increases. Right. When I was a kid, houses were expensive. The government was investigating why housing was so expensive. A brand new house cost $22,000, and they thought it was high. Wow. Here I am, I'm 71 years old now, and that same house would probably be $1 million. My kids are going to buy that house for $1 million, and when they're 70 years old, that house will probably be $30 million. Okay? We have to understand how wealth is created in real estate. If we did, we would have rental projects because we need rental projects, but we would structure them so our people will benefit. They'll be able to stay long term. They'll get out of rentals into ownership. You know, we try to solve the problem by building housing. No, it's not the building of the housing that's important to the equation. What's important is we build houses that people can own, or houses or rental units that will create value for the tenants. Right now, the owner of the building is the one who builds it for $10 million, and 30 years later sells it for $100 million, and takes the money and goes back to the mainland.
Here's a question from one of our viewers, Wesley. It says, what about allowing high rises at Eva and Kapolei? I think this goes back to I don't know if this was a Singapore, one of the Singapore ideas as well, as far as building these massive, massive high rises for the sake of making it more affordable. I mean, what are the pros and cons, or just the cons?
You can't make housing affordable by building more housing, because all that will happen is more people will come to Hawaii. You have to build housing that is affordable and will stay affordable on the local market. So that's the art, is not just building, because the mainland buyers will buy, the Asian buyers will buy, the European buyers will buy, wealthy retirees will buy. The local economy cannot compete. We have become an international real estate economy. Once that happens, your market is no longer tied to local wages, local income. We have to accept that what has happened. So we've missed the opportunity to solve the problem by building on the local market. Now we have to build and then say that house will remain affordable forever. Not 5 years, 10 years, 30 years, forever. And require that it be sold to residents of Hawaii.
So why is that? Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, the state just announced, the state legislature just announced a new plan, a housing omnibus bill for this session. Mm-hmm. And what it includes is a focus on leasehold condominiums at 99-year leases on West Oahu land out at the West Oahu campus. So they're going to do it on state land, and you're talking about high-rise density out there closer to the rail station. The devil's in the details on this because they have to work out what the shared equity would be. But it's all, again, to Peter's point on the importance of earning equity in the home. That's what they're trying to achieve, so it's kind of like a step one. But hopefully, and for us who just do strictly rental housing, we'd like to see more of that along the rail line as it gets closer to the urban core.
And I think this brings up an important point. You know, it's not going to be one solution strategy. Ownership obviously has a component. The rental, especially on the lower end, has an important component to play. And also our transit-oriented development program, especially along the rail, is absolutely critical to our future. And so what we've seen actually, which I think is very positive, is this rise in collaboration with all the partners, state, city, you know, in our Transit Development Council, our TOD Council. And so I think there's a real commitment that's being made as we see this opportunity start to unfold.
So what do you, let me let you expand a little bit more on that when you talk about commitment, because I think that's a big thing that people are worried about, that there hasn't been enough commitment and coordination and incentive maybe in some ways for a lot of these entities that need to be coordinated. What do you think is, what's happened in recent years, would you say, that has allowed that to move in the kind of direction, cohesive direction that it needs to?
We have a state TOD council, and that includes representatives from the state, the city. But that council is coordinating its efforts. So, for example, we just came out with a revised Kapolei TOD plan, and it involves 3 of the stations. It's a 2020 plan, but it incorporates input from city, state, all the different players that are involved. So I think the planning now has become much more integrated, much more collaborative. And that, I think, is going to be a huge driver of what becomes possible. Because one of the things we know from the research is 40% of the income that poorer people have is going more and more towards transportation. We've got to remove the transportation cost out of the factor. The reason why HUD, Housing and Urban Development, uses a factor like 30% of your income towards housing is because it's positing 15% of your income towards transportation. If we remove the transportation part out, then we increase people's income, the amount of money that they have available for housing. So TOD is really critical to our future because transportation can eat into a poor person or anyone's pocketbook more and more. Not only that, it has impact on climate change and everything else. So that's why I believe the TOD, that 20-mile corridors, is really critical, and people are starting to see that.
We're talking about the solutions. To me, the easiest solution for Hawaii, and we could build 30,000 homes in the next 10 years with none of the issues of the foreigners buying and everything else, if we would simply build on Hawaiian Homes lands. We have a commitment to the Hawaiian community. We should take that commitment seriously and build.
I'm going to let you continue because this is one of the questions. This is from Mel and Kaka'ako. Caller recently saw you on an interview and thought you had some great ideas on how Hawaiian homelands can be used to help solve our housing crisis. So just want to make sure that I address Mel there. But
the beauty of Hawaiian homes, it can only be sold to local Hawaiians. Cannot be sold to foreigners, cannot be sold to mainland haoles. So we now have a system, at least for those homes, that they will stay on the local market, be tied to the local values, et cetera, local incomes. Now, if you do that and 30,000 Hawaiians move on to Hawaiian homes, that means their rental units opened up, the houses they were living in open up and now can be rented.
So what's been the barrier there? Because that's been available for a long time, that land.
The barrier is there has never been a commitment to build. There's no excuse for not building on Hawaiian homes. And they've had problems, they've maybe had bad administration, the government didn't make the commitments they should have made, but we are in a crisis. And the easiest solution is to move our Hawaiian community onto Hawaiian Homes lands, take them out of our market, take them out of our rental market, take them out of our ownership market, and nobody can own those but Native Hawaiians.
And I think a lot of people have wondered about that, so feel free to.
So I do want to chime in because I do think Peter is right on that. I think that's a very important strategy. And I think Department of Hawaiian Homelands is making some changes that are very helpful. They're allowing, their administrative rules have been modified to allow multifamily development. That's very important. They're in the process of finalizing the allowance of accessory dwelling units on Hawaiian Homelands property. Again, they would only be able to be occupied by those that meet the blood quantum. So I think there are signs that DHHL is moving in the right direction, so we should support that and encourage it.
I just wanted to point out that, what we've been talking about is mostly focused on Oahu, and it's easier to do TOD, transit-oriented development, on Oahu because we have the infrastructure. But the outer islands really have an infrastructure problem, and that takes a lot of money to build up that infrastructure to even think about transit-oriented development over there. And the infrastructure is necessary, obviously, to build more homes over there.
Let me jump in here real quick here. Shelley from Kauai. This is a somewhat related question. Any chance the state or county would allow a second small home or an ADU on agriculture zone land? Say if the homeowner had adequate infrastructure, she's thinking about families and farmers out in the area. I just want to make, some of these are going to bounce around a little bit, but I need to make sure I get to some viewer questions.
I think all of those things are possible.
Yeah.
They all make sense. But if they have this unit and then it turns out it's rented as a vacation rental or something, it defeats the purpose. And I think that's what we always have to be able to balance, is we have a strong demand locally, but we can't afford it. We have strong demand internationally that can outbid us on anything, and we have a strong demand for vacation rentals and tourism. So if we allow homes to be built, but then to be shifted over to vacation rentals, it's wasted. So we have to be very clear. If you're going to build this extra unit, it's for the local market, it's for long-term rental, it's not short-term rentals. And as long as you have that requirement, it all works, it all helps.
And I think that's one of the reasons why we really pushed the short-term rental law that we put into place. And that was an amazing effort because it was done unanimously, the leadership of the council, the leadership of the mayor together, recognizing that we must do our planning and make our ordinances through the lens primarily of our local people, not through our visitors.
I want to let Keith jump in here.
Well, I just want to say that I agree with the caller that the ADUs are going to be a critical part of this. It's just one small part, but Faith Action really pushed to get the ADU bill through that is in place now. And one of the good things about that is that it's privately funded. This is people putting more housing on their land. Most of the things we're talking about here are subsidized. And so it's important that we have a mix of answers so that it's not all government funding that's trying to solve this. This is one of the ways private enterprise, local people can be investing in their properties and helping solve the housing problem.
And the ADUs are making a difference. We have over 400, around 400 that have a certificate of occupancy. We've granted permits to around 1,000. And that's just since that law's been in inception. I would also say that the mayor and the council agreed on incentives for ADUs, which actually are equivalent to around $10,000. So while we're not giving a direct subsidy, we are giving an indirect subsidy. And we're also speeding up the permitting process, which on other projects sometimes can be
You hear about that a lot.
Okay.
You hear about the permitting process a lot.
When it comes to ADUs,
Yeah, that's
not so much. No, I think that is part, again, of the solution strategy.
Let me get to this a little bit more about non-residents and sort of how that's sort of being looked at now. A lot of people, concerned about that. One question from Terry Newton wanted, why can't laws be put into effect that tax non-residents more, and then revenue could be used to invest in local owner occupants? One way to look at it, right? There's so many different ways to kind of slice this. Let's talk about that a little bit more. What's sort of on the playing field right now, and what's happening as far as how to almost sort of, what's the algorithm maybe? I don't know.
I have recommended programs where they raise property taxes to every property owner to, let's say, $20,000 a year. But the local residents would get a tax exemption or home exemption, which would bring it down to $1,000 or $2,000. But all the mainland buyers, all the foreign buyers would pay $20,000. Now realize we have some of the lowest property taxes in the country. I own a building in San Francisco, and I bought it because my daughter was going to school. My property taxes are, I think, $20,000 a year, right? And it's crazy.
That's been on the ballot, I don't know how many times, right? People see that as kind of the last sort of saving area where they get a break.
But that's why you have so many foreign buyers here, because our property taxes are so low. Now, if you raise property taxes, that means the monthly payment for the foreign buyer is $1,000 more or $2,000 more, but the local buyer, it's only $200 because he's only paying $1,000. So you've given us a competitive edge now to compete with the mainland buyers. So that's something that we really need to look at. And of course, as soon as you say raise taxes to $20,000, everyone panics because they don't hear the part about, but we're going to give you a home exemption and you only pay $1,000.
You wanted to jump in, Kevin?
No, none on that issue.
No one wants to touch the property.
Well, I would like to jump in.
what I did.
First of all, we do have two categories of property taxes, you know, in Honolulu now.
Yeah, but it's
And
not
part of
aggressive enough.
Well, and that's fine, and certainly there's been discussion about increasing that. But we already have some of the structure in place to make a distinction so that we can charge a higher property tax to, you know, especially to those that are non-owner occupants.
Should that be a more aggressive distinction? And if why not?
I think it's worthy of further discussion. I think people of goodwill may debate that, and I think we should have further debate.
Do you agree with me? Do you think that a lot of people, anything about raising property taxes here, people just kind of freeze and sort of, you
Well,
know?
local people will keep the same tax. It's the foreigner, it's the off-island owner who will end up paying a higher tax. But remember, a lot of our government and our needs are funded through our income tax, not our property tax. The foreign guys may pay taxes, but they don't pay income tax. They're only paying the property tax.
And
so by
that's-
raising the rates, you kind of equalize the playing field.
There are other ways, though, of addressing that. One of the things that we propose in our resilience plan is a vacancy fee, a vacancy tax, you know, something like what Vancouver has done, which also helps to tap in to those who own property here, but who do not occupy it, who are not residents, and are not renting it out as well. So I think, again, that is something that will also have a positive impact. And then the money raised from that, which has been very successful in Vancouver, would go towards affordable housing. But anytime you mention the word tax or fee, people, you know, get excited, and it's understandable. So I think there will have to be a lot of education, whichever direction we move in.
But that's a big one, because that also allows us to actually use the housing we've already built. One of the challenges we have is we've got a fair amount of housing stock that's just sitting empty right now.
Yes.
And if we could encourage people to put people in those houses and in those apartments, that's a part of the solution. It's actually kind of the low-hanging fruit.
Yes.
We should be
Expand
doing
on that a
that.
little bit more. You said there's a lot of availability.
They buy,
I'm not sure
people buy homes as vacation
see.
homes. So they come for 3 months, then it sits vacant. I know of an individual who's owned a unit here for 20 years, and he comes on the average once a year for maybe a month. And the rest of the time, his apartment sits vacant. Now, he's wealthy enough to do that, right? And there are a lot of people like that. But it would have been nice if they'd rent the unit out.
Well, this is something that we've already addressed to a degree, right? This is what passed.
Oh.
No, this
As
is
far
very
as the
different.
illegal- okay, this is
See,
different. Yeah,
these
explain
are
this to
different.
folks.
These are units that, like Peter said, are empty. They're called seasonal units. They have different expressions.
Different than the bed and breakfast.
Very
They're not
different.
Everybody's been
renting it
hearing
out.
about.
Yeah, these are not
keeping them vacant.
Got
Airbnb
it.
or anything like that. They're just empty. So I have enough money. I fly in once a month, and I can stay, you know, in my condo wherever. Okay. So we want to put an additional fee or vacancy tax. There are different models on that. We estimate 15 to 20,000 seasonal units like this on Oahu. It's not an insignificant number of units. And so in a lot of those units, like Keith said, could be rented out. In fact, what they've seen in Vancouver is a number of these units, not only did they generate money from the fees that were actually charged, but then a high percentage of units were brought back on the market, which is really what we want, because we want to have housing for our local
And
people.
if they're paying the higher fee, and all of that money is going into helping the local people with the subsidies or building additional units, that's what has to happen. You got to remember, again, we're a state with low property taxes, high income tax. So if you don't live here and you only pay property taxes, you're getting a free ride. I live in, like I say, I own a unit in San Francisco. I pay $20,000 a year in taxes, and I think it's ridiculous. But I don't pay any income tax up there. But they fund everything through property taxes. Right. If we use that model, the foreign buyers, the mainland buyers, would be paying, you know, tens and hundreds of millions of dollars into our economy that would go to the people of Hawaii. Right now, we're subsidizing them. We're paying for the beaches and the roads and the schools, and they don't pay anything.
So why do you think that hasn't changed? Why do you think there hasn't been more of an emphasis on that sector of the market?
Because the state tends to respond to a crisis. It's never really been a crisis. I got news for everybody.
Yeah.
It's become a crisis.
It's a crisis.
It's going to get worse. And now they're going to have to be a little more creative, a little more innovative. And now that we've become an international city, those foreign buyers are going to become a bigger and bigger part of our market. So we have to start looking at that.
So we're going to get to that a little bit, but I got to show you this graphic because this is very telling. So you talk about that now the state sees this as a crisis. Well, This is behind you is a report called the Hawaii Crisis in Housing that was put out in 1970. And the language that was used is that we're in the middle of a housing crisis in 1970. This is from the state. So how do you reconcile that if we're looking at a report that I think was pulled out from the dusty shelves of the library at some point earlier this week is saying this is what's happening, and here we are today?
But in 1970, we were in a housing crisis. But it was a housing crisis to build more affordable housing for local people with almost no influence from outside buyers. Now we're in a different crisis. We got a different set of circumstances, and because we failed in the 60s and the 70s, the 80s and the 90s, in 2020, we are either going to get a handle on this and correct it, or the local community will be devastated. Our children will leave, our older people will leave, they will not stay because they cannot afford to. They've got family going to the mainland, earning the same income, but living in a beautiful home they could buy, their cost of living is less, and they're sitting here working 3 jobs to survive. We cannot sustain where we are. We are on the verge of losing what I would call local. And we're going to become a community for wealthy people from around the world. And our kids and those who stay, we're going to be the janitors and the yard people. And we're going to have trouble competing with them. And that's what's going to happen.
Or we're going to build housing for local people.
And keep them.
And a part of that is going to be what we're talking about. We got to that Singapore model and the transit-oriented development. That's got to be a part of it.
I want to get to that a little bit more. Let me just really quickly, can you explain a little bit more about what your organization does? How
Sure.
you, yeah.
So we're Faith Action for Community Equity. We're about a 25-year-old organization. We've been working on quality of life issues in Hawaii. And we've worked on a range of things, including long-term care, education. We've been working on keeping affordable housing affordable. So when it kind of terms out and it's going to go to market rate, trying to work with the tenants and see if we can't get it and keep it affordable. So we've been working on a number of issues for 25 years. Housing is one of the things that really at the top of our list right now. And I'm excited about this time because it looks like everybody is coming around and understands, no, we've got to do something now. We're losing our young people. This has always been a crisis, but it's worse than it ever was. I mean, for a lot of the rents now are going up to a very high percentage, like 40%.
I think we've got a graphic here.
Income.
Continue, but I just wanted to show, this is rent versus wages also behind you there. You can see just, it was about 2005. It just absolutely took off, as you can see right there behind you there. It was kind of flattening out around the 80s or so, around 2000 or so, maybe it was 9/11 or so, kind of eased up, and then it just took off. It took off, and you look at the discrepancy there between rent and wages. I mean,
and this is becoming an
what you're talking
international
about.
city, as Peter was saying, is what's happening. And this is really the problem that we need to solve today. And so it was a crisis back then. It's an even bigger crisis
today.
right now.
And that graph basically proves what I'm saying is our rents are no longer tied to the local market. Our pricing is no longer tied to the local market. It's tied to what an outsider will pay. So we have done a real inservice to our people, and we need to reverse it. And that's where the state and the city and the county governments have to make that commitment, absolute commitment, to get our people into ownership and into housing.
Well, I think, the county and I think our state colleagues are very much committed to that. Now, I'm not sure that we're committed necessarily to the ownership because I think we have to take care of the major rocks first. And I think part of that is addressing some of the low-end rental. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we've addressed some zoning and permitting issues so that we can build, larger homes that are more walk-up so we can replace some of those. That's why we've cut back on parking requirements too as well to make it easier for some of the smaller developments to take place.
what is this here? Yeah, we got one more graphic I want to float up here. Percentage of income for rent. Also behind you there. You look at that. Sorry to make you guys twist around. 1968, 23%. Now we're up to more than 50%.
And that was 2016.
That's a few years ago. That's a few years
And
ago.
what HUD calls affordable is 30% of your income for rent and utilities.
And Kevin, tell me a little bit more about your organization too and how you're involved.
Well, EAH is a will be 52 years old in April, formed in Marin County in California. We are a low-income, affordable rental developer, manager, and we also provide services for our residents. We've developed over 185 properties over our lifespan, and we've been in Hawaii since 1996, and we have 21 properties on 3 islands right now. We have one property we just opened last month, 2 months ago in Kaka'ako, 84 units with a preference for artists. Later this month, we plan to open the first micro-unit project, which is a very unique project, if I could talk about that for a moment. It's on leasehold land provided by the Hawaii Community Development Authority. It's less than 10,000 square feet. We're building 111 micro-units in a 16-story building. It's considered a transit-oriented development project because it's right along the future rail line. So we only have 3 parking stalls for staff primarily. And it's financed through the low-income housing tax credit program, so it'll be 100% at 60% of the area median income and below. And that's our typical modus operandi, if you will. This is just very unique. The size of the units are 285 square feet with a Murphy bed inside.
So I think this
For
goes
those who
to
know.
what all of you are talking about as far as just not being able to look at this as one answer.
Right.
It's got to be a
combination.
a combination.
And that is a really good project, but I have to object in the fact that it doesn't create value for the tenant. And that's what we're losing sight of.
Different populations here. Maybe I got to get to some of these questions because our viewers are so important. So I'm gonna test you guys a little bit. Daniel from on Facebook is testing the notion of higher taxing for the non-locals. He said, "What's the negative here? Are there some negatives of highly taxing non-local owner occupants?"
Yes, they won't buy. They'll sell their homes and go back to the mainland or wherever they're from, which is good. You know, to me, I don't really see bad in it. I see change, but it's a good change because it's going to make it more expensive. It's going to require these buyers to pay their fair share of what it costs to live in Hawaii. And they can afford it. Trust me, it's not going to discourage most of them because if they're from California or most mainland states, they're used to paying high taxes.
Okay, here's a way to kind of flip this question a little bit. Lloyd from Kahala is saying, if we can reduce the cost of housing, will that cause a lot of folks to move back from the mainland and then increase demand and drive up prices? He's kind of looking at it from a different angle here.
Yeah, well, trust me, if we build more housing, right now all that will happen is more mainland and foreign buyers will come and buy. So they're always going to be part of our market unless we can control them somehow. So yes, and you're right. As more people come back, you got to understand Hawaii is a beautiful place to live.
Yes.
If you want to make Hawaii affordable, just build a few steel plants and a couple refineries. You know, pollute the atmosphere, do all those things. Nobody will want to come. The price will drop, but we're going to be miserable. The problem is we're a great place to live, and we got to accept the fact. We got to have some kind of fence to keep people where we need them.
I know that this is not Anand from Kauai. This is not what he is talking about, referring to that. But he says, why is the panel not talking about how a local family can afford to buy a house in Hawaii? I'm sure he didn't mean that, as far as bringing the prices down. But
that is what it's about. We do need to bring the prices down. But the key is, as Peter was saying, is distinguishing between the local family and the international market. And so as we build, it's putting in those restrictions. That's the way it was done in Singapore. And that was for sale. It was leasehold in Singapore for sale. And that model has, I think, some potential here.
Okay,
because you
so we're
take away
getting
the
into the
land
Singapore
cost.
model here.
Well, Ken, I just want to say one other thing. It's not just about reducing the cost of housing, it's also economic development. And even though this isn't, this panel is about housing, the economic development component cannot be lost. I mean, where is the state of our economic development plan for our state so that we can increase the income of those who live here as well, so that we can really develop what we have here? That, I think, is critical. We need to move away gradually from tourism and from our focus on the military. We need to diversify our economy. We've talked about that for a long time.
But the beauty about buying a house, you lock in your biggest monthly payment for 30 years if you got a 30-year loan. So even if wages don't go up as fast, it doesn't matter. You own the property, you're making a payment. So again, if you rent, every year you get a pay raise, but you pay more rent. So like I say, all of these things are needed, but the government's attitude has to be real estate creates wealth. We're spending hundreds of millions of dollars subsidizing developers, subsidizing rents. Why don't we require that some of that wealth stays with the local market and it doesn't just go to the owner of the building? We use our poor as a funnel through which all of the money flows to the wealthy developers and the wealthy owners of the building. Wrong model. Doesn't work in Hawaii.
Okay,
we got to create wealth for our people.
Here's a question from Michael Waikiki. We should tax high-income individuals greater than 200 million a year. That's a lot. Wow. 80 to 90%, and use the money to build small houses for homeless people and get them back to workforce. He's got a plan. Michael's being very specific here. But I think this just goes to kind of talking about different ways to sort of look at how we can deal with this. But
I was going to say, to
kind of along the line
answer
of
the previous question on why can't we lower the cost of construction, we need to change the laws. We need to change the development process. Look how long it took to get Ho'opili moving. Look how long it took to get Koa Ridge going. I mean, that's like 20 years to get entitlements.
And you are going right to Kimo's question. He says, we need about 40K homes to build to accommodate population growth, ease current shortage. No one is talking about the right thing. You're talking about it. Need for new zoning and permits, deregulation on developers, and incentivizing the construction developers with credits. Right. That's his kind of...
And some of that is in the new omnibus bill that I talked about earlier. It has to do with eliminating certain permit requirements for affordable housing. It delegates some of the
so that's in the works,
State Preservation Department responsibilities to the counties because it takes time to go through SHPTA, the State Preservation Office. The counties, and there's also money in the budget to the counties so that they can hire staff to process all this. It's all about speeding up the process. Time is money. Mm-hmm. And that's how we reduce costs.
And there are other things that we have been putting into place, like whether it's with accessory dwelling units, making that easier for, small families, for homeowners to develop and expand their income. Also, our infill development properties, we're looking at tax incentives on that. We have incentives for TOD development. So we have a number of these things that are going into place. I think one of the challenges with for example, with the city and county and with government, it takes a while to get our ordinances through. I mean, it was only in 2018, really in 2018 that we're able to sign our affordable housing requirement bill and incentives bill, and the rules just came out this year. But we have those things in place that we didn't have a few years ago. We weren't even able to build accessory dwelling units until really 2017.
I think a lot of people are wondering if we're building enough, right? We got one more graphic here. Housing unit construction way down compared to 70s, even going to the 80s. Even compared to the early 2000s, it's quite a bit lower. So.
Well, except that I have to beg to differ on some of that. Mayor Coleman's second term of his administration has set 800 units of affordable housing, normally defined at 120% AMI and below, for each of the next 4 years. In the first year, we did almost 1,100. We just did over 1,300. Of this 1,300, almost 200 were 60% AMI and below. And as I shared earlier, we have over 1,150 units ready to go that are 60% AMI and below. This is very different than just a few years ago.
But there's still a scale problem, right? I mean, we're talking about good things happening, but the need is just so big. And so the streamlining that your caller was talking about, the zoning and the permitting, that's going to be critical. If you're going to scale everything up to the level that we actually need it, we need to go and kind of reinvent ourselves in the way we do things. Now, that doesn't mean just build, right? It has to be built appropriately. We do, if you're in Hawaii, you care about the environment. It needs to be appropriate and part to the plan. But once we look and say, okay, that's in our master plan, the actual doing of that should just be sort of automatic.
And with our TOD designs, that is the direction we're moving in. So that once the TOD plan is agreed upon in a particular area, then it becomes much easier for developers and development to take place. I do say we have to be careful. The Houston experience was a sore reminder that, uncontrolled, unmonitored is not so good. We have to protect our people. We have to protect this asset that Peter, I think, so eloquently said is such a treasure. We need to protect
You know,
it.
you made a good point. I'm sorry, go
I
ahead.
just wanted to point out, since you mentioned the rail line again, I believe the majority landholder along the rail line is the state.
Right.
So we're probably talking about leasehold property, and we don't have an issue with that at all. Hopefully they'll continue the 99-year leasehold side of it. But there's an opportunity to really make a big crunch into the housing crisis along that rail line.
As serious as it's gotten, we are in a better position to solve it today than I think we've ever been, only because I think most people are beginning to realize, oh, wow, it really is a problem, okay? But again, we have to have a plan to do it. And that's where the legislature and the public has to get involved and carry out a dialogue and decide where we want to go and what do we want and what do we need. And you know, we have to make it so our local residents can live a good life, can have one job, can thrive, and can raise a family, and not be under constant pressure of where am I going to get the money to pay the rent? Oh my God, I can't get sick because I need the income. You know, we've put our people under a huge amount of pressure, and that's part of the reason we have the homelessness. We've made it impossible for a lot of people to survive, have 3 jobs, and still not have enough money to live.
So here's from Alan and Hilo saying, we're never going to get affordable housing while you can make a profit on the sale of housing. We need an 80% tax on profit on the sale of housing. Ooh.
You know, I'd like to bring in the neighbor islands. Someone touched on that earlier because we really should. And there's some great examples going on. I was at a housing directors meeting a couple months ago on Maui, and Mayor Victorino's team did a TOD plan. And when I saw it on the agenda, I was going, TOD? You know, Kahului, you know, but they do. They have this plan, transit-oriented development. It's not just about rail. Unfortunately, a lot of people hear TOD, they think just rail, but it's not. It's multimodal transportation systems. And so they have a plan from Wailuku to Kahului. And it's really cool because it's not just about transit and multimodal transportation systems. They're looking at economic and educational development because they've got the UH campus there, they've got the Maui Culture and Arts Center, they have healthcare in that area. They're looking at what kind of housing will help to attract better business, what kind will support better business, and vice versa. So there are some good models elsewhere that we should look at in our own community. And I think that's actually kind of exciting. TOD is catching on.
Here's another quick one from Janine. She said, what about putting a 10-year holding on new houses can't sell for 10 years? She said it's happening in Lahaina, apparently.
A lot of affordable projects, they have the restriction for 10 years. But again, things happen. Families have legitimate reasons to need a bigger house, a smaller house. So I tend to be about against those types of restrictions. But I personally would rather see a restriction that says, you bought that house and you were an 80% of medium income, and you can sell the house at any time to someone who's an 80% of medium income. Because what you've now done is you've tied the appreciation to wages in Hawaii. So as wages go up, your house value goes up, and then when you sell it, someone in 80% can buy. Right now, you can sell it to someone from Japan for $1 million, and that really doesn't help us, right? We have to keep our housing affordable.
Okay, so here's one from Manana and Aiea. What about occupying vacant military housing? There should be a ban on non-Hawaii residents buying housing in Hawaii. Oh, 2 questions. Okay, let's start with the first one, though, about occupying vacant military housing. Is that on the table? Where is that at? Is that being
I'm not
looked
sure
at?
there's a lot of vacant military
Is there not
housing.
really? Is that sort of a perception?
I
They
think
sold a
we're
lot.
already doing a lot of that at former Barbers Point,
Okay.
for one.
But
And I
kinda-
think they've opened up the single-family homes on a lot of the bases for, other than the military, government employees, et cetera.
But in terms of all the new military development, you know, I don't think you can do that legally. I think, you know, on the basis.
Yeah, well, they control it, so.
So I
Right,
think
but
that
encouraging, kind of like Hawaiian homelands, encouraging the military to house more of their own, again, frees up land, frees up housing.
Right, and that
the
is one of
residents.
our problems right now because the military gets a subsidy for renting. So thousands of the military actually move out into our rental market.
Right.
They can pay higher rent because they have a $2,000 certificate. And that's one of the reasons that drives our rents. Again, our rents are not tied to the local
So
economy.
do we have any influence there in that discussion? Is there any talk of how we might balance that a little bit better, knowing that that's something coming into the market?
Part of the solution is if they actually qualify for our affordable housing, because they don't earn a lot of money and they don't count the rental subsidy as income, that's the first change I would make, to say, no, that $2,000 rental subsidy will be counted as income, so you no longer qualify for 80% of medium, you're now 140 or 160. So force them out of the affordable rentals, et cetera. A lot of these projects you see where they talk about affordable rentals, what they're actually doing is they're renting to the military. And they're getting the higher rents.
But every time you talk affordable, you have to define what AMI level you're talking about.
And that's different for the military?
Because when you say, no, it's not different for the military, it's just different for everybody when you say affordable.
Technically, affordability is broadly defined as 140% AMI and below, but the real need is
explain AMI again, sorry.
Area median income. So 140% means people are making 140% of what the middle point is. So that's considered
for Hawaii, income in Hawaii.
Here.
Right. Yes. And so that's problematic. In fact, that's one of the issues with the state legislative
the military
proposals.
benefits is they have their income, then they get an additional $2,000. But by law, you cannot count the $2,000 as income, right? It's a housing allowance. But for our public housing, we should say, no, that is going to count as income, so you don't qualify for our public housing. You don't qualify for our affordable rentals.
I'm not sure that we could legally make that distinction.
I don't think they qualify anymore, given the raises that they have. I know we're serving 60% and below, and we don't have any military families that qualify.
But one thing you're hearing in a number of these questions, I think, is a real rage. There's a real outrage. The housing is not working for our people. And, there's just, how are we going to change that? And I think the TOD was part of it. I think Kevin's talk about how the state owns land along the transit corridor is just it gives us a huge opportunity here. Because what it means is we can increase density along the transit-oriented, with transit-oriented development, and we can have people develop a lifestyle that doesn't require the car. They get the cost savings of not having to own a car. And we're doing all of this within the urban footprint. So we're not doing the urban sprawl. We're not expanding the size of Honolulu. So by increasing density along the transit corridor with the state-owned land, we can provide that subsidy of that state land, right, for the leasehold, and provide more affordable housing. And then if we can streamline by getting our permitting and getting our zoning faster, we'll be able to help get the construction costs down so that the subsidy to build the affordable housing will be a great deal less.
So we've got just a few minutes
left.
left.
There's a lot there.
We've got a few minutes left. So I just want to make sure everybody kind of chirps in too as to other solutions. Solutions are other solutions that you're focusing on now, that is sticking to the wall, that really is going to be at the forefront, and also some that are coming into the picture that really are adding, making the conversation more interesting. What you're seeing, whether it be in Singapore or elsewhere. I want to give each of you about a minute to expand on that.
Sure. Well, I'm going to go back to my concept of creating value, because my aunt was a secretary in New York, really couldn't afford to live in New York, but she bought into a tenant-owned condo or co-op. Her cost to get in was the security deposit of $500. Her monthly payment then was sort of locked in. It only went up as taxes and things went up. 40 years later, she sold it. She got back her security deposit with interest at 5%, so she got back like $5,000. She gave the unit back, and then you think, well, that's all she had. Well, she also had saved $2 million, and she had put it in the stock market, et cetera. And she could have only done that because she locked in a monthly payment for the 40 years, and after the 40 years, she had no mortgage to pay. She was just paying her maintenance fee. And that's where the city sells their housing projects. They should sell them to the tenants. The state sells their housing projects. They should sell them to the tenants. We should have tenant-owned condominiums or tenant-owned rental buildings. We have to get away from creating wealth for everybody but our people.
Kevin, why don't
we're going to continue to do what we do and serve those at 60% and below of the area median income. To do that, we need a steady flow of subsidies, both from the state and the federal government. And in our 52-year history, we've never sold a property. So we're the closest you can come to affordable in perpetuity, I think. And as long as the demand is there, we're going to continue to try to fill that need.
And Mark, we got about a minute left, and there was somebody who on their card said, "Hey, I'm not sure if I'm hopeful about this conversation or not." So what right now?
Well, I think we are in a very hopeful place because I think we're focused on getting results. I think we're shifting our planning through the lens of those who live here, not through the lens of those who visit here. I think we are really looking at being very creative. We know it's not going to be one approach.
It's have to be multiple.
Absolutely, we have to look at some of these other options. But I think now more and more, because of a real collaborative atmosphere that's actually starting to generate more units for those who are in need, and we're starting to entertain things that a few years ago we would not have entertained, like a vacancy fee or a vacancy tax. And I think we're taking seriously the impact on our environment, climate change. These are complicated issues, but we're doing it together.
And I'm going to have to wrap you on that. I'm so sorry. We are out of time, but thank you so much, all of you, for joining us tonight, and thank our guests. Keith Webster, co-chair of the Faith Action Housing Task Force and the Housing Coalition Now Coalition, Peter Salvio, housing developer and the president and CEO of the Salvio Group, Kevin Carney, vice president of EAH Housing, and Mark Alexander from the Housing Office for the City and County of Honolulu. All right, next week on Insights, workers wanted, low unemployment numbers. Yeah, sound great, unless you're an employer trying to hire workers. Please join us. Until then, I'm Laurie Amata for Insights on PBS Hawaii. Ohuiho.